Midway through the 1985 Winston Cup season, Bill Elliott had already scored 7 of the 11 wins he'd rack up that year on NASCAR's biggest and fastest tracks. Back-to-back victories at Pocono and Michigan sent Elliott hurtling into the 4th of July race at Daytona as the series point leader and clear favorite to win the Pepsi Firecracker 400. His last trip to Florida in February saw him win the pole, his 125-mile qualifier, and he led 136 of the 200 laps for his first Daytona 500 win in only his 7th attempt. So fast was the Melling-prepared Coors Ford Thunderbird that even a loss of 2 laps due to an oil leak at Talladega couldn't keep it out of victory lane. That win now put Elliott in position to clinch the first ever Winston Million that September in Darlington, a tracker he had also won from the pole in another 500-mile race that very spring. So it was hardly surprising that July weekend that Elliott scored his 3rd straight pole and led 103 of 160 laps. But he didn't win the race. In fact, he finished nearly 24 seconds behind the number 10 car, an unsponsored white and red Chevrolet with a driver who didn't even race the previous week, a driver who was so unknown to the fans that they didn't recognize him when he sat next to them on the commercial flight back to Charlotte. As if by divine retribution, they returned from the brink of extinction in even greater numbers. They aroused anger in some, admiration in others, but each knew 2004 was their chance to rise. They were the Field Fillers! Greg Sachs grew up in Mattituck, New York, on the northeastern part of Long Island. There, his family operated a major produce and vegetable wholesale business. It was hard work, starting at 4 in the morning and ending late at night, 6 days a week. To unwind, young Sachs would race cars around the property. I had beach buggies and cars that we would take out and race around the outer edges of potato fields and through the woodlands, said Sachs. We'd go to the junkyards and find the cars with the biggest V8 engines, cut them down some, and then go have a ball. You didn't have to have a license or anything, because you ran on private property. I had a beach buggy that would go about 75 or 80 miles per hour, and a friend of mine had one that would go about 120 on the beach, and that is fast. We would do this on the Sound a lot. The beach is not as wide as, say, Daytona, and it doesn't have its flatness. There's a lot more angle to it, like the banking of a racetrack. The car would kind of run sideways the whole way. That's where I learned to handle a car. Much of Sachs' pre-NASCAR career was chronicled by Deb Williams in her October 1990 feature for NASCAR Winston Cup Illustrated. In it, she described how Sachs began racing go-karts at 13, and as a junior in high school had the opportunity to race a stock car on the quarter-mile Riverhead Raceway. Midway through the season, Riverhead's track promoter built a figure-8 track in the infield. When his friend refused to race on it, Sachs stepped up. When the green flag dropped, Sachs went wide open, throwing himself into 3 or 4 head-on collisions before the battery flew out of his car, ending his race. The next year, the two built another figure-8 car on the dirt floor of Sachs' father's 2-car garage. In the garage, they tied a block and tackle to a beam to pull out his only engine for repairs. Then they'd load the car on the back of an old 1954 truck that used 10 quarts of oil just to get it to Riverhead. With this car, Sachs nearly won the championship until the final race when he ran out of fuel while leading with 2 laps to go. Sachs then made the jump to the NASCAR Modified ranks, competing at Islip, Utica Rome, Shangri-La, and Fulton County. But now married to his wife Vicky, with 3 children, Sachs found the series too expensive, and after a blown engine at Pocono in 1978, he sold his team. But in his absence from the series, Sachs was now getting calls from his competitors, including Maynard Troyer, the former racer turned car builder. It was Troyer who got Sachs in touch with Lee Allard, who a year previous fielded Modifieds for Jeff Bodine. Now driving for Allard's team, Sachs would focus exclusively on racing, and won at Westboro, Massachusetts. In his first win outside of Long Island, Sachs finished ahead of Richie Evans, Bugsy Stevens, and Jerry Cook, 3 drivers who between them won the previous 19 series championships. In December of 1980, Sachs was already getting attention from Winston Cup owners. He made his first trip to Daytona International Speedway that month, invited by Richard Childress and Junior Johnson. The two owners were both testing cars for NASCAR's new 1981 regulations for shorter wheelbase models in the Winston Cup Series. Childress wasn't ready to retire yet, but did plan to scale back in '81 with Sachs driving in 10 races, using Johnson's engines. On the second day of the test, Sachs was running 187 miles per hour in Childress's Pontiac Grand Prix, which ran heavy 650-pound springs in the rear of the car to make it run free. But it was too free. Coming off turn 4, Sachs broke loose, and the car went airborne. It flipped nearly 10 times, landed on top of a steel wall, then tumbled another 500 feet across the grass. As Childress and Johnson followed the trail of debris, they found Sachs with his helmet stripped off his head. He was hyperventilating as medical crews reached him at the car. The first flip had knocked him out, and he awoke in Halifax Medical Center with a broken collarbone, a broken leg, a broken cheekbone, and stitches in his head. He had double vision for 2 days. His eyes remained bloodshot for months, but he was still released in time for Christmas, ready to go racing again. Sachs returned to the Modifieds once more, first for Cal Smalls and then for Ernie Wilsberg. A friend of the family and a crew member, Wilsberg didn't have any cars, but did own Mattituck Plumbing and Heating, and with those funds wanted to start a team for Sachs to drive in 1982. This allowed Sachs to pick up cars or engines from any builder he liked. Their first car was prepared in upstate New York, meaning the pair had to drive 8 hours to bring it down from Wilsberg's home, then continue south to New Smyrna. The trip was worth it. The car was a rocket ship. In the World Series of Racing, Sachs beat Richie Evans on 3 straight nights, each time passing him in the final 15 laps. This was just the beginning of a year that saw Sachs win 28 of the 38 races he entered, twice winning 9 in a row. Of those 28 victories, 13 came at Stafford, including the final Friday night race, which came after he swept the Oswego 200 and Thompson 300 on the same weekend. After such dominance, the driver, now nicknamed Superman Sachs, was ready to make his second run at the NASCAR Winston Cup Series. He considered the Busch Grand National Series, but was convinced by his father Arnie and brother Harry that the three could join forces and make a push at Cup. The new Sachs & Sons team put together a distinctive white and red Chevrolet No. 5, and on the 4th of July in 1983 returned to the same Daytona track where Sachs had been so seriously injured just 3 years earlier. There, he qualified 22nd, but made just 19 laps before the engine let go. He failed to finish 3 of his remaining 4 starts that year, then made a push for Rookie of the Year in 1984, now running the number 51. Other than a 9th place finish in the night race at Bristol, a track where he didn't even start in the spring, the results weren't much better, and Rusty Wallace beat him for Rookie of the Year. Sachs & Sons returned to attempt the 1985 Daytona 500, where this time the team looked to make a statement. This time Sachs bought from Harry Rainier the Chevrolet that Cale Yarborough won the 500 with in 1984, and leased an engine from Robert Yates. With such a strong car and engine, Sachs climbed as high as 3rd in the closing stages before a late race restart dropped him to 6th. This was still a new career best, but Sachs waved off a reporter who congratulated him. "Someday," he said, "I'm going to show my grandchildren a trophy for winning here." The finish, and the nearly $45,000 payday that came with it, was enough to carry the Sachs team up to the spring race at Talladega, but no further. There, the team qualified well, only to lose the engine in final practice. With no backup engine, and Sachs unwilling to gamble that he'd be able to pay for another one with his winnings on Sunday, the team was forced to withdraw, and soon suspended operations. Sachs picked up a 3-race deal with James Hilton, but continued to have engine problems there. By July, he'd failed to finish half his Cup starts to that point, 20 out of 40. For all intents and purposes, Sachs' career may have ended right there, but little did he know this was just the beginning. DiGard Racing was among the many teams struggling to figure out why Bill Elliott was so dominant. According to an interview on the Scene Vault podcast, crew chief Gary Nelson thought he had the answer and wanted to come up with a new chassis for their driver Bobby Allison, the series champion 2 years earlier. When Allison refused, Nelson handed over his crew chief duties to Robin Pemberton and turned his attention to spearheading a research and development program. Unlike other test programs, which focused on single-car testing, this car would be run under race conditions. The test car would be entered alongside Allison as a teammate in the upcoming Pepsi Firecracker 400. Believing Nelson's efforts would help Allison's team co-owner Bill Gardner rented a second shop in Welcome, North Carolina, so it wouldn't distract from Allison's team, and hired an engineer from Ford. There wasn't enough time to build a car from scratch, so they would instead fine-tune a car that had already shown promise earlier that year, when their engine builder Robert Yates provided the engine. This is how, 2 days later, Greg Sacks got the call to bring his Daytona 500 car out of storage and down to Welcome. Sacks leased the car to DiGard, looking to pay off the bills that remained from the operations of Sacks & Sons. He would still drive the car, now given the number 10, in the series return to Daytona. The crew set to work, focusing on maximizing handling, aerodynamics, and horsepower. Nelson remarked that the car had, quote, about 100 unconventional chassis things on it. If 50 worked, we'd be in the middle of the pack. If more than 50 worked, we'd be more to the front. And if most of them worked, we'd have a chance to win. Sacks has since kept many of these changes a secret, only since hinting at some changes to the front suspension. Curiously, the car didn't have a brand new Robert Yates engine. They only used one that Yates was planning on rebuilding anyway. A pit crew also wasn't a top priority. Among the crew was a man from New Zealand who had never even seen a race, and another man who used to block for Doug Flutie playing football at Boston College. The team didn't have any gas cans, air wrenches, or even a jack until Nelson bought them 3 days before the race. Nevertheless, when the team unloaded in Daytona, they were so fast that Sacks called his family to come to the track. He knew they were going to witness something special.
The pace car is away. We are ready to unfurl the green at the 27th running of the Firecracker 400. It is underway, and already Bill Elliott, the man from Dawsonville, Georgia, is out in front of this 41-car field. Now, Greg Sacks, a New Yorker. What a rare event that is. Challenging Bill Elliott for the lead in the Firecracker 400. And Sacks has moved in front. The 32-year-old from Madison, Long Island, New York, has challenged the superstar Ford and has taken the lead and now begins to muscle by Bill Elliott. Greg Sacks slides in front of Bill Elliott, who drops down low. Remember, the car behind those two, Terry Labonte, is not involved in this front-running race. Greg Sacks, once again, is the leader in the Firecracker 400.
On the 4th of July, 1985, 2 years to the day of his first Cup start, Sacks was fast, but his ragtag crew kept costing him spots on pit road. That changed on the final stop, when crew members from Blue Max Racing came over to help pit the car.
Of course, out there, inexperience stands in stark contrast to the experience of Gary Nelson, their crew chief. But these guys were just thrown together in the last week or so, and suddenly they have to perform under unbelievable pressure.
Amidst all that activity, a man from New Zealand who's never seen a Grand National race, and a former fullback with the Boston College football team. Fuel and tires on the right side, and Greg Sacks is back out onto the racetrack here in Daytona.
With 9 laps to go, Bill Elliott was leading, but his Ford was struggling with a pickup problem that meant he could only use about 18 of the 22 gallons in his fuel tank. Out of gas, he came down pit road, handing the lead back to Sacks. And on the final lap, Terry Labonte passed Sacks to get his lap back. But Sacks thought this was the battle for the lead. His radio wasn't working, so no one told him to let him by.
Labonte still in front of Greg Sacks. It would take the unbelievable. Sacks is moving high alongside Labonte, way close to the wall. That definitely confirms it. There is no way Sacks would make such a move if he felt he was in front. But now, even in his own mind, Greg Sacks is the winner of the Firecracker 400. Amazing that happened today, and there are the people who pulled it off. They didn't work together more than a week ago, but somehow they put it all together today.
This remains one of the most incredible upsets in the history of NASCAR. In only his 41st career start and only his third season in Winston Cup, Greg Sacks led 3 times for 33 laps and beat the best superspeedway driver of the year at Daytona.
They said Bill Elliott was unbeatable, but today you proved him wrong.
Well, we felt like we had a slight chance at him all day long. In the middle of the race, when I run in this draft, I was comfortable there. We were just looking to watch him out, not show him what we had. I'm sure he wasn't showing us all he had. So we were looking to make it a run down to the wire.
All right, your car carries no sponsorship of any kind. It's said to contain a lot of secret speed ideas. What might be some of them now that you've used them to win?
Are you kidding me, Sam? Talladega's next.
It was no exaggeration to call him a virtual unknown at the time, at least beyond the figure eights and bull rings of the Northeast. While Sacks spoke with stunned riders who were still learning who he was, the trophy went missing. "Bill Gardner doesn't have it," said Sacks. "I asked him, and I'd like to have it. The trophy belongs to the driver. The trophy says winner on it, and that's the driver." Daytona track officials would later present him with a duplicate. Someone had escaped with the trophy, but no one could take away the win. Incredibly, Sacks reported back to work at the produce company the very next morning after the race, but it was hardly business as usual. Already, DiGard planned for him to run more research and development races later in the 1985 season, a Pontiac in Talladega and a Ford in Darlington, but he'd never again race as Daytona winner. In the July 18, 1985 issue of Grand National Scene, Sacks listed the car for sale, without its engine or transmission, for $35,000, part of a total liquidation of Sacks & Sons' remaining assets. Ken Reagan bought the car, which was totaled in a crash at Daytona the following year. As Sacks sold the last of his owner-driver operation, Bobby Allison restarted his. Allison was furious, finishing 18th that day at Daytona, 4 laps down to the research and development car.
You know, I'm kind of at a loss. I was told that this was not going to happen, that there was not going to be a second team, that there was going to be a single effort, and that we were going to test and try to get our stuff up to speed. And it was a surprise to me when I saw the car.
You don't have time during the racing circuit to go out and try things, especially at a racetrack, under race conditions, and you're racing against the best. And you just can't afford to make the kind of mistakes that could put you out in 10 laps. And we have made it very clear we're making that information and technology that we're going to try, both, again, in the area of engines and chassis, back to, the race car driven by Bobby Allison.
Citing a provision in his contract that DiGard would remain a single-car team, Allison left the team and prepared his own car for the next race at Pocono. He'd even run the same number 22 in sponsorship from Miller American. Fortunately for DiGard, Miller would honor the rest of their contract with the team, sponsoring both Allison and his former ride, which was now renumbered the 77. Needing a replacement for Allison, DiGard put Dick Trickle and Ken Reagan on R&D duty and promoted Sacks as their new full-time driver with a 5-year contract.
But Greg, there's got to be some additional pressure upon you running in this car. You won in the R&D car, but this is the main mount.
Well, yes, it is. I tell you, it's a great feeling to be here in the Miller American Quaker State car. I've got my crew coming in me right now. It's hard for me to hear what you're saying, but this is a great day for me.
Well, you can be sure that Greg Sacks will be putting to the pedal to the metal, because what he told me before is, hey, I'm 1 for 1 for DiGard Racing. Let's go back upstairs.
It has always been nearly impossible for a surprise winner to keep up the momentum, particularly when thrust immediately into a full-time schedule. Recall what happened in 2011 when Trevor Bayne pulled a similar upset in the Daytona 500, then struggled from the outset in the next race at Phoenix. Sacks experienced the same thing. In that first race in the 77 at Pocono, he lost the engine and finished 34th, while Allison came home in 12th. In the next race at Talladega, he found DiGard's Buicks didn't perform as well in the draft as his Daytona winner, which in testing before its sale ran 3 full miles per hour faster. He was still fast in qualifying, and in the next 5 races lined up no worse than 11th, but of those 5 starts, he failed to finish 4 of them. Things started to stabilize at the end of the year with a pair of top 10 finishes at Rockingham and Atlanta, but the DiGard team continued to struggle. Looking to recapture the magic of a year earlier, Sacks again drove the number 10 in 1986, which was once more designated a research and development car, this time in conjunction with sponsor TRW engines and chassis components. Sachs also had a teammate of his own now in Willie T. Ribbs, but other than a 4th place qualifying run at Atlanta and a 10th place finish in Talladega, the year got off to a disastrous start. Plagued by mechanical woes, Sachs was already looking to get out of his contract just 4 races into the year. Things were so bad that he didn't even want to drive a DiGard car in May's running of the Winston, the spot he'd earned with his Daytona victory.
Greg earned the spot in the Winston by winning the Pepsi Firecracker 400 last July at Daytona Beach.
He ended up starting the race, but finished in last place. When Sachs tried to arrange a deal with Raymond Beadle, Bill Gardner intervened, saying he'd file an injunction to keep him from racing. Eventually, driver and owner worked out a deal where if Sachs ran his 4 scheduled races for sponsor TRW, he'd be let out of his contract. After a 10th place finish in Talladega, Sachs crashed out of the other 3, including his return to the Firecracker 400, where he qualified a full 6 miles per hour slower than pole sitter Cale Yarborough. Midway through the '87 season, DiGard closed, and Sachs's Pontiac was later put on display at the International Motorsports Hall of Fame in Talladega, where it can still be seen today. DiGard's remaining assets were purchased by Bob Whitcomb, who decided to keep the team's car number 10 for his own team, Bob Whitcomb Racing. That, of course, is another story. While DiGard had gone, Sachs found another ride, but for the rest of his career, he'd rarely stay with any one team for long. The result was a particularly eventful, Forrest Gump-like tour through NASCAR's golden age, though most often with teams that competed at the back of the field and on the verge of collapse. His first stop came with the Dingman Brothers racing team. In the early 1980s, the Dingman Brothers competed in IMSA GTO and GTP competition, fielding Valvoline-sponsored Corvettes and Firebirds in the 12 Hours of Sebring and the 24 Hours of Daytona. In 1986, owner-driver Billy Dingman made his first ever entry into NASCAR, fielding a car for Tommy Riggins for stock car racing's return to Watkins Glen. Now for '87, he looked to expand that program, running a number 50 Pontiac that looked nearly identical to the Valvoline cars that Raymock Engineering entered for Neil Bonnet. Sachs jumped at the opportunity. With DiGard, he still had to work 4 days a week at the family business in Long Island. Now in 1987, he was free to move to Dingman's hometown of Winter Park, Florida, and focus on racing full-time.
You can't do enough racing. Every week you stay home, you fall behind. Not only as a driver, not being as sharp as you should be, but your crew and your chassis setups. You know, you got to stay after these cars all the time because you're always making progress.
Sachs finished 20th in the team's first Daytona 500, but the next week at Rockingham was handed his first of 11 DNFs in 16 starts that year. It was frustrating last year because we had so many problems, and it was nothing you could really put a finger on, said Sachs. It was something different all the time. By season's end, Valvoline scaled back their support, and Dingman suspended his IMSA team. The crew was left scrambling to upgrade their superspeedway car to Pontiac's new body style in time for the Daytona 500. They made it and discovered they built a lightning-quick car. Sachs ranked 19th after the first 2 rounds of qualifying, putting him 10th on the grid for the first 125-mile qualifier. On Thursday, he stayed in the lead pack and finished in 4th. "This race was good for my ego," said Sachs. "It was good for the team. It raised everyone's confidence." The run also impressed Bobby Allison, his former teammate, who watched Sachs in his rearview mirror as he won the qualifier. "He may have been the surprise of the race," he said. "He had been inconspicuous all week, but he was a real factor out there. They seem to have gotten things together." Despite the impressive run, Sachs still didn't pick up a sponsor for Sunday. Lined up 7th on the grid, the team only added a heart-shaped decal to mark the race's running on Valentine's Day. The car made it just 22 laps into the race before the engine let go, leaving Sachs 40th out of 42 starters. Sachs was anxious for his next chance, but the Dingman team didn't enter the next 2 races at Richmond and Rockingham, stirring rumors that the team had shut down. Billy Dingman denied this, and on March 13th explained that the team miscalculated arrival dates on car and engine parts, keeping them from preparing cars for the short tracks. The Dingmans did return in Atlanta, but Sachs failed to qualify. Then he made the show at Darlington, only to finish 31st with another blown engine.
Car number 50, Greg Sachs, is going to the garage. His day is over. Oil dumped out in turn number 1. He has cooked an engine, and he is gone from the race, and that's bad luck for young Greg Sachs, the young New Yorker, who continues to show great promise, but doesn't seem to have that little piece of luck to propel him into a moment of glory.
Greg, you have the distinction of being the first car out of the Winston. What happened?
Well, Benny, it seems like it must have burned a piston. The bottom end's all held together yet, but it must have burned a piston. Smoke came out the exhaust on the right-hand side, and I just lost power, so I had to bring her in.
Did you dump fluid down on the racetrack? Is this going to be a long caution?
I don't know. My spotter was up in the first turn, and he saw the smoke come out the pipes on the right-hand side going into turn 1. I got it down out of the groove after turn 2, but I'd say, if anything, they just need to clean up some oil in turn 1.
Better luck in 89, Greg.
Thanks, Benny.
Sachs returned to Talladega and finished 17th, then took 10th in the Coca-Cola 600, but still hadn't landed a sponsor. This kept the team off the entry list for another 4 races, including the final race at Riverside. "Actually, I've been pleased with the way the car is running," said Sachs in June. "I haven't been happy not being able to run all the races. The problem has been sponsorship." Sachs wasn't entered in the next 3 races, all on short tracks, and crew chief Bobby Jones was let go with no replacement named. One by one, potential sponsors continued to elude the team, including one rumored to be a popular tourist destination. As the series headed back to Daytona for the 3rd anniversary of Sachs' win, the driver didn't entirely deny that he was planning on leaving the team. "I wouldn't say I've been looking for another ride," he said. "Basically, what I'm looking for is running a full schedule in 1989. What step that will require, I don't know. Hopefully, we can do that right here." This time, Sachs ran a jet black Pontiac with blue pinstriping, but only qualified 32nd for the Firecracker 400. This put him in a dangerous spot on lap 2 when Alan Kulwicki blew an engine off turn 4, triggering a multi-car pileup.
Right-hand corner of the screen as Kulwicki spins in his own oil. And he gathers up Cale Yarborough, has a flash fire, goes across, narrowly missing one car, slamming into the wall, but gathering up Benny Parsons. Kulwicki then careens off of the wall, slams into 2 more cars, gathering them up in a tremendous chain reaction accident.
Speeding through the smoke, Sachs turned left past a spinning Benny Parsons, then quickly to the right as Kulwicki collided with Cale Yarborough and came out the other side with his car in one piece. It was a moment Sachs would revisit just a few months later in his career. In the meantime, after another close call with Sterling Marlin, who blew a tire in front of him, Sachs came home in 10th, matching his finish from the Coca-Cola 600. "My car wasn't fast, but we hung in there and did the best we could do," he said. "A top 10 finish, especially with as competitive as the Winston Cup Series is a tremendous effort." Sachs started 3 of the next 4 races, but finished no better than 34th in each, failing to finish each time. Frustrated by his shortened schedule and lack of sponsorship, Sachs left Dingman Brothers Racing in September. The team again fended off rumors that they were closing, saying they had 5 new Pontiacs ready to go and 14 crew members to work on them. They brought series veteran Charlie Glotz back to Charlotte, who failed to qualify. For the season finale at Atlanta, they brought on a Florida native in Bobby Coyle, a track champion at the Hialeah Speedway, who looked to make the jump from ARCA to Winston Cup. That February, when he was driving for another team, Coyle nearly qualified for the Daytona 500 until he was bumped out of line. And in testing in Atlanta, Coyle ran laps faster than Dale Earnhardt. But Coyle failed to qualify, and the Dingman brothers made just 3 more starts in 1989 before they shut down. By 1984, Buddy Baker had driven for 14 different teams in his legendary Winston Cup career. He was then driving for the Wood Brothers, but wasn't satisfied with a winless season, saying he felt, quote, a half car length short all year. In August of '84, he began assembling a team of his own. He partnered with Danny Schiff, president of clothing company Bullfrog Knits, and Bill LaRock, the company's special events director. Based in Gastonia, North Carolina, Bullfrog became involved in NASCAR by first sponsoring Lake Speed at the Haas Ellington team. They also put forward $60,000 in bonus money to reward lap leaders in the 25th annual Coca-Cola 600. Now Schiff joined Baker as the co-owner of Baker Racing Service Incorporated, where LaRock would serve as team manager and Bullfrog itself would be an associate sponsor until a primary could be found. Baker announced the team prior to qualifying for the November 1984 race at Atlanta, and soon named Robert Harrington as his crew chief. The team set up shop in Lake Norman, North Carolina, where they prepare 4 Oldsmobiles from Hutcherson-Pagan with engines from B&R Automotive in High Point, the same engines that Sam Ard ran in the late model Sportsman series. Baker also worked out a deal with fellow team owner Cliff Stewart to run the number 88. Baker wanted the number for its historical significance. A reference to the classic Olds 88, it also happened to be the car number of a fast Dodge that Baker once bought from Cotton Owens. But the team was just as much about the future. I got to the point in my career where I wondered what my potential was, and this is the best way to find out, said Baker. I'll be working very closely with Oldsmobile to make sure we have a winner. I'm not getting into this looking for top 10 finishes. I'm looking for the championship. In its first 3 years of operation, Baker Racing Service had not yet lived up to those expectations. The team's only full-time campaign in 1985 yielded just 2 top 5 finishes and a 17th place rank in points. New sponsorship from Liquid Wrench and Crisco kept the team functioning on a part-time basis, but Baker's few flashes of brilliance were overshadowed by a slew of mechanical issues. By the 1988 season, when Baker picked up sponsorship from Red Baron Frozen Pizza from Don Levy Racing, he began the year a strong 9th in the Daytona 500, led 22 laps at Rockingham, and climbed to 7th in points after a 10th in the 5th race at Darlington. But 3 DNFs sent him back down the rankings, including a hard crash during the particularly brutal Coca-Cola 600.
Buddy Baker climbing out of number 88. 3-time winner. Ernie Irvan's number 2 is there. Baker on the ground. The 3-time winner of this event, Buddy Baker, 1968, 72, and 73 is hurt, perhaps, hopefully, just had the wind knocked out of him.
At Talladega in July, Baker was running as high as 4th before his onboard fire extinguisher went off, temporarily blinding him. He still finished the race 10th, keeping him 11th in points, just 3 points out of the top 10. But in the next race at Watkins Glen, Baker didn't feel well. He had trouble with his balance, and behind the wheel, the track felt like it was moving even when the car was standing still. Baker went to the hospital, expecting to be sent home with some medication. Instead, he was rushed into surgery. Doctors discovered a blood clot in his brain, one which may have been the result of his crash in Charlotte. Baker survived the surgery, and during his recovery watched as Morgan Shepherd, his stand-in at Watkins Glen, drove in his place, and did so again at Michigan. Rick Mast ran the next 2 races at Bristol and Darlington. But in September, when Sachs left the Dingman Brothers, he signed with Baker. Their first race together was at the newly reconfigured Richmond, where Sachs qualified 8th and finished in 13th. By the time he finished 10th in North Wilkesboro, Sachs had been extended into the upcoming 1989 season. I like his personal appearance, said Baker of Sachs. I like his personality, and I like his driving ability. I really feel like we can work together toward a national championship. At the same time, Baker made clear that he was not retiring. I haven't retired by any stretch of the imagination, he said. I want to be the one that retires me. Still, Baker conceded that he wouldn't interfere with Sachs's efforts in 1989. If Baker did run another Cup race, he'd do so with another team. After a 1-year absence, Crisco rejoined Baker's team as sponsor in 1989, where Sachs would run an eye-catching blue car with gold foil numbers that were later changed to white. The year began with more adversity as Sachs crashed hard in the opening laps of the 125-mile qualifying race, then in the 500 drove the backup car to a 23rd place finish. But there were soon flashes of brilliance, a 9th place finish in Rockingham, then a strong weekend in Darlington, where he was fastest in practice, stayed in the top 5 for much of the day, and led twice for 7 laps. With 15 to go, he was still among the leaders when the engine let go, resulting in a multi-car crash.
Yeah, Jackie, the engine did let go, and I feel something bad for AC and Crisco, Mobile One, Pontiac. You know, the car was working so well, and it's all a tribute to my new crew chief, Jake Elder. He's done a fabulous job, and I know that everybody can expect more of this to come. We're going to get out there, we're going to win some races. I'm just glad that, you know, when the engine expired, no one got hurt behind us.
And you're okay.
I'm fine.
1 week later, undaunted by the disappointment, Sachs picked up right where he left off.
Behind Greg Sacks.
Pulled up a little too much, but look, can you believe that? The man was sideways and he took the lead?
Unbelievable. Well, Greg Sacks had a tremendous run last week at Darlington and unfortunately crashed in the late going. And here he is now taking the lead from Bill Elliott sideways coming off the second corner. Ernie Irvan moves to second and Bill Elliott is back in third as Dale Earnhardt now pressures Bill for that third spot. There you can see the 89 results for Greg Sacks, 40th, 9th, 26th, and 34th. And that 25th place you see there reflects his accident at Darlington and certainly not the way that he competed before that crash.
This time he led more laps than anyone in the race, 119 laps, taking lead 5 times. But again, with 43 laps to go, Rusty Wallace made the winning pass after Sacks pitted, and with 24 to go, the Crisco car spun, dropping him to 7th.
Tough break for Greg Sacks. Every caution that's up to this point, Greg Sacks pits on the backstretch, comes out as the leader. This time the pace car was late coming out. Sacks had to make an extra lap and he lost the lead.
The deal with Baker also allowed Sacks to make his first starts in the Busch Series, driving the number 87 Pontiac, sponsored by Lowe's Foods. After he famously handed the wheel to Dale Earnhardt in Daytona, following the Intimidator's own crash, Sacks won his first career pole at Charlotte in May. But Sacks missed the driver's meeting, thinking it was scheduled at a different time. Sent to the back of the field, he finished just 22nd with a blown engine. The 600 on Sunday was the first Baker would miss as a driver. He competed in each of the first 29. In the inaugural running in 1960, he finished 19th and earned just $400. Said Sacks in that weekend's press release, quote, "Just by coincidence, in 3 of Baker's first 5 600 starts, he finished 35th, 36th, 38th, and in 3 of my first 5 600 starts, I finished 35th, 36th, and 38th. Buddy then went on to win the 600 3 times. If things happen for me the way they did for Buddy, then we'll do just fine this weekend." Crisco hosted a contest for media members to guess where Sacks would finish. The correct prediction, worth the grand prize of a home fryer and a case of Crisco, was 30th place, the result of a crash that was his 3rd DNF in a row. Having already changed crew chiefs, Baker released Sacks the next week, replacing him with Jimmy Spencer. Spencer picked up 3 more top 10 finishes that year, just 1 more than Sacks, and the team shut down at season's end. Tom Winkle, owner of 4 GM dealerships in Ohio, wanted to follow in the footsteps of Rick Hendrick, but he didn't want to start a team from scratch. Instead, he reached out to J.D. McDuffie, buying him new cars and equipment for the 1986 season, each painted with the name of Winkle's dealership and new sponsorship from AC Spark Plugs. J.D. started to improve, but not fast enough for Winkle's liking. He turned his attention to rookie Steve Chrisman, then ended up taking all his equipment back from McDuffie, including the street cars he lent to the family. Only then did he discover the problem wasn't the driver. Chrisman's days often ended in the garage, just as they did for Morgan Shepherd, Rodney Combs, Tommy Ellis, and Joe Ruttman. Shepherd authored the team's best performance, however, winning the last pole at the Richmond Fairgrounds and finishing 7th in Rockingham. When Sacks was let go by the Baker team, Tom Winkle Motorsports had made only 3 early season starts in 1989 with Mickey Gibbs, finishing 20th at Rockingham, 39th in Atlanta, and 29th in Richmond. But on June 22nd, Winkle signed Sacks to drive his number 48 Pontiac, now sponsored by Dinner Bell Foods and Food Lion grocery stores. "I've known and admired Greg for several years," said Winkle. "I think we've got the right chemistry to make this program work." This reunited Sacks with crew chief Bobby Jones and engine builder Dickie Burgess, who each worked with him at the Dingman Brothers a year earlier. Sacks made his team debut at Michigan, where he turned just 34 laps before the oil pump failed. Winkle expanded the deal from 6 to 10 races, where Sacks qualified for 9 and failed to finish 6. Of those DNFs, none were more spectacular than at Pocono on July 23rd, as he headed into Turn 1 on lap 128.
And a trouble. Oh, we have a car upside down, rolling down the racetrack. That's the number 48 car, driven by Greg Sacks.
Looks like Lake Speed.
Lake Speed also involved. Greg Sacks' car on its top. However, we can see movement inside the cockpit. We believe there's a small fire burning in the engine compartment.
It looks that way on top of the engine.
And there we see Greg crawling out from the car.
Yeah,
Boy, get out of there. Atta boy.
So that's always good to see the driver come out after a crash of that sort.
He doesn't have a helmet on.
Well, he had to take it off because of the radio.
Climb out.
Now he wants to go back help Lake Speed to see if Lake's okay. Checking on him. He pulled his helmet off to because the radio.
In turn number 1, and again, we're going to be delayed considerably because the wall has given away once again.
Incredibly, despite some cuts and bruises, it was Sachs who climbed from his car to check on Lake Speed, who was treated for a dislocated right shoulder.
I have never seen a crash like that in a long time here. You're okay. That's good news.
Yeah, I'm fine, Jack. And I'd like to tell everybody back at Defiance, back at Dinner Bell, we're doing fine, and we'll see you up at Michigan. Everything's going great here. Our team will bounce back. Lake Speed out there is doing fine. I've talked to him. I've let all his fans know, and all my fans back in Matatuck, New York. We're doing fine. Food Line people, we're glad to have your support, and we'll be back at Michigan.
What went through your mind when you were going end over end down there?
Well, Jack, I thought it was never going to stop, and I was just hoping to God that another car wouldn't hit me, let's say in a roof or something. And, I could see the fire. Then once it did stop, of course, fate would have it, it'd be on your roof. And the oil was running right down under me. I don't know if you saw me shaking my hand when I got out, because when I had to brace myself to take my belts off, I had to put my hand down in the hot oil. And, that window opening only looked like it was about 6 inches, but I come out of there like a snake.
Once again, Sachs was out of a ride at season's end. And once again, the Winkle team made just one more start in 1990 before it closed its doors. In a strange way, perhaps it was this accident at Pocono that led to the next and perhaps most famous turn in Sachs's NASCAR Winston Cup career. Like DiGard, Hendrick Motorsports had its own research and development program. Their first was in operation until 1988, when it was sold to Felix Sabates, who with those assets founded his own Cup team, Sabco Racing. By 1989, a new R&D team had come together, headed by crew chief Gary DeHart. It was this second team which, late in the 1989 season, was enlisted by Paramount Pictures to provide cars for their upcoming film, Days of Thunder. The team first invited Sachs to Phoenix, where he drove 160 laps around the track carrying 2 bulky cameras installed on opposite corners of his car. Much of this footage was used in the film's first act, where Tom Cruise's character Cole Trickle struggled to adjust to stock car racing. It was also a challenge for Sachs.
In addition to having its tires changed and being gassed up at every pit stop, the main Chevy Lumina was serviced by a special film crew in charge of reloading the cameras.
We have one in the front of the car and one in the back. Every time it comes in, when we change it, we pull the whole thing out. And another camera and film will go back in.
I probably can beat half the field even with the extra 250 pounds. That's what's hurting the car is the cameras. We've got about 200 pounds, 100 in front of the right front tire and 100 pounds behind the right rear tire in absolutely the worst place you could want it. The car is driving about like a tank with the cameras in it. Without them, it's a competitive car. It's very strong. We really thought we had a shot at sitting on the pole here with that car.
After that, DeHart and Hendrick Vice President Jimmy Johnson brought Sachs to Atlanta to test another car. By December, Paramount requested Sachs's presence for 4 to 5 days of additional filming. Those days extended into 5 months, during which Sachs became both a stuntman and driver. When the 1990 season began, Sachs was driving cars from the film in the Busch Clash, the Goodies 300, and both 125-mile qualifiers. While his runs in the 125s weren't scored, he led 4 laps of the Clash before Ken Schrader made the winning pass, then led 5 laps of the 300 before Dale Earnhardt got by with 9 to go. This deal continued into the spring, where Sachs drove other film cars at Darlington, Atlanta, and Charlotte. When filming wrapped in May, the Reject Team, as DeHart called it, wanted to go racing on the Winston Cup Tour. Rick Hendrick talked with Sachs about running another 6 to 8 races, with an option to also compete more in the Busch Series, with cars built by Robert G. He'd start out with the Winston Open, the Coca-Cola 600 at Charlotte, and Stan Barrett would drive at Sears Point. Rumors swirled that Sachs would return to his role as a research and development driver, which now conflicted with new NASCAR regulations that restricted testing after the March race at Atlanta. But this became a moot point when at Atlanta, Paul Newman invested in the team, forming Newman-Hendrick Racing. Hendrick met Newman in 1986 through mutual friend and racer Jim Fitzgerald, who at the time was the driver instructor at Road Atlanta. Like Hendrick, Newman was so impressed with Sachs' driving during the filming sequences of Days of Thunder that he was eager to see what he could do in a race. The team would be headed by Gary DeHart and Dennis Conner, with engines built by Charlie Seegers. They even had a lucrative sponsor, as Ultra Slim Fast expanded their backing from Phil Barkdahl's team to also sponsor this number 18 Chevrolet. Just like with DiGard at Daytona in 1985, the plan wasn't simply to test, but to actively compete for race wins. The team happened because of the movie, said Hendrick. We wouldn't have this team if it wasn't for the movie. In order not to bother our 3 teams, we had to create something for the movie. Greg just worked hard for the movie. All the guys have worked so hard. Sachs added, Days of Thunder gave me the opportunity to go to Phoenix to work with Rick Hendrick, and that has turned out to be the biggest change of my career. We not only feel like we can go out and win races, but we can go out and win the championship. For now, the Newman-Hendrick deal would run only a partial schedule. Just like in the movie, they would debut in the season that was already underway. Their first race came in Talladega in May, where Sachs drove a brand new hand-built car that DeHart and his team built from the ground up for the movie, using the latest technology from Chevrolet. Sachs only qualified 17th, but led 4 times for 41 laps, and was locked onto Dale Earnhardt's rear bumper as the white flag flew.
Left to go. Will it be Earnhardt or will it be Greg Sachs? Let's follow them around and see what happens.
Earnhardt keeps a rod down on the bottom of the racetrack. Sachs backed up to get a good run off the second corner, Ned. Yep, didn't back up too much. I think he did because Earnhardt saw that move. Look, Earnhardt all the way down, almost in the grass. Drafted Bill Elliott just to get a little bit of help there.
Don't think Greg Sachs is going to be able to do it. He does close in just a little bit and comes within a car length.
It's a long way from the 4th turn down to the start-finish line, though.
It is a long way. Here we are. They come out of the 33 degrees of banking onto the tri-oval, banked at 18 degrees. Still, Greg Sachs runs behind Dale Earnhardt. Sachs looks to the inside. Is he going to be able to do it? He now looks to the outside. They cross the line. No, it's Dale Earnhardt winning the Winston 500, and Greg Sachs with a beautiful battle in second position.
Greg Sachs, second place. It's a good return to the sport right here. Well, it sure is, and it's a credit to my man right here, Gary DeHart, and the Hendrick organization. You know, Charlie and Randy Dorton, they put this engine together, and it's a great car. Gary built this car from the ground up, and I know a lot to him. You know, and if it wasn't for the back and the Ultra Slim Fast, you know, I wouldn't be here today, so that's great.
When you tried the move on Earnhardt, did he just have too much car for you?
Well, you know, the best 2 cars finished first and second. What can I say? A little disappointed that I didn't win it, but we had a heck of a run, and you know, Dale and I had hooked up quite a bit through the day to break away from the field, and that was kind of the strategy. Let's go out and race for it and let the best man win. And today was Dale's turn. Maybe tomorrow will be mine.
Earnhardt was surprisingly candid in his assessment of this returning challenger. He noticed how fast Sachs was, but remarked he was slower in the corners than on the straights. This, along with drafting off the lapped Bill Elliott, spelled the difference. Through the summer, when road racer Stan Barrett made a one-off at Sears Point and finished 17th, Sachs and the Newman-Hendrick team continued to impress. They finished 14th in the Coca-Cola 600, led 3 times for 29 laps at Pocono on their way to a 7th place finish, then after a rough outing at Michigan, were excited to return to Daytona for the Pepsi 400. After 3 near misses at a win through the first half of the 1990 season, and with the potential of landing a 3-year contract with the team, Sachs was determined to score his second 400 in 5 years. In practice, he remarked that no one else could keep up with him. He then stormed to his first Winston Cup pole with a blistering lap of 195.533 miles per hour. Even the cloudy skies on race morning promised to keep his car fast. Whoever can step up and keep the pace, he said. Dale, Kenny, whoever, let's go. I'm just looking to run flat out from the drop of the green flag. Still, he tried his best to stay calm. All this is exciting, but at the same time, you've got to be a little reserved with that excitement, he said before the race. You don't want to fool yourself into thinking you're better than you are, but we feel we've got a great car. Sachs's paint scheme might look familiar if you grew up watching Nickelodeon in the 1990s. And that scene may look familiar if you've seen the start of the 1990 Pepsi 400.
Boy, somebody's got to give there.
Three abreast racing. Look at this. Coming out of corner number 4, they touch. All three cars are touching as they come down through the tri-oval, but everybody maintains position. Wow. Oh no, Sachs is in trouble.
And takes Petty with him.
And we're going to have a terrific crash here as nearly all the field is going to be involved in this crash. There are only about 10 or 12 cars that survived this melee just past the starting line.
Sachs was among the 23 drivers collected in the accident, and among the 5 to only complete the opening lap.
I'm with Gary Dehart, the crew chief on Greg Sachs' car, and it's looking pretty bad right now from what Greg said on the radio to you.
Yeah, he said they had to put it on a hook and bring it in. It's probably tore it pretty bad. What we saw right here, I could only see sheet metal damage, but he said the car is pretty messed up.
You'll bring it in, though, and try and get it back out.
We're going to bring it in and look at it and see what it looks like. Yeah, if we can get back out, we'll get back out for our sponsors. Greg's okay. He's walking back up the track, so he's okay.
I know you had a lot of high hopes today. A very disappointing way to finish it, especially this early in the race.
Yeah, we've had some good luck this week. We've ran good, and they say that's the way it goes. When your luck just piles up on you, get you once in a while. So we'll be back. Maybe we'll get to go to Pocono and run good up there.
Thank you, Gary. I know a lot of people expected Greg Sachs to run away with the race, but unfortunately for the Ultra Slim Fast team, Bob, they're going to have to spend some time behind the wall and will not be a factor.
Well, yeah, I didn't have a real good start, and Dale got underneath me, and that's really where things kind of started, Then coming off 2, Richard went to the inside, and, well, we were 3 wide going into turn 3. I don't know if Richard knew that Derek was on the outside or not, but we went into turn 3 wide, and we're coming all the way around the turn, and I was in the middle there, and Derek was out there. We touched a little bit. Richard come up, and coming off of turn 4, it was the same way, 3 wide. And I don't know, there was plenty of room. I don't know why we couldn't keep going. If Richard got a little loose coming through the trial or whatnot, I don't really know. But before you know it, we got to turn around, and Derek was in the wall, and the whole melee started. It's just a darn shame, that early in a race. Well, the Slim Fast team was really looking for great things today. We felt like we could bring this thing home. We've had the best car in practice, and time trials, kind of proved that. And we really thought we'd get the job done today. It just didn't turn out that way.
Greg Sachs, who had a great run here back in February in the Clash and, of course, at Talladega. Greg, you can rebuild race cars, you can't rebuild drivers, and thankfully the drivers are okay. Bob?
Sachs was uninjured, but he did receive some angry letters from fans after the race. I sat in the trailer and read some of the letters to the editor, and we got some pretty good laughs, he said. I've never had a lack of confidence or faith in my ability. I care a lot about fan support, don't get me wrong, but a few letters of negative fan response is not going to put a damper on either my confidence or faith in my ability. A big part of racing to me is the support of the fans. I love the response of the fans. If I could sing, I would love to be on a stage and have about 400,000 people out there just listening to me. I like the show business end of racing. In a way, it hurts a little, but like I said, I'm not going to let it get me down. That same weekend at Daytona saw Sachs' Hendrick teammate Darrell Waltrip break a leg after a hard practice crash with Dave Marcus. In fact, during that same 400, Sachs took over as Waltrip's second backup driver after Jimmy Horton suffered heat exhaustion with 40 to go. Sachs would himself start Waltrip's cars in a few Cup and Busch Series races through the summer, giving him even more valuable track time and top equipment. At Michigan in August, he drove Waltrip's car to another runner-up finish, this time behind Mark Martin, and after he led twice for 4 laps. Back in the Slim Fast car, Sachs returned to Talladega in July, where issues with air intake and cowl pressure put him 38th on the grid. In 70 laps, he climbed into the top 10, only to finish in 18th. Still, with the promise of a contract, Sachs kept his spirits high. I have never been happier about anything in my life, he said. About anything. My wonderful marriage, my family, my racing career. This is the best time in my life right now. There's been some pretty tough points in my racing. I have had my tail tucked between my legs and my head down a number of times. I felt like the whole world was falling apart. I feel fortunate right now that everything is going great, that I can't sit here and pinpoint the worst time.
Thank you, Ken. This is a festive day, but with a somber tone. 22-year-old Rob Moroso, the Busch Grand National champion and the leading Winston Cup rookie driver, died late last Sunday night in a 2-car highway accident. Tammy Williams, the driver of the other car involved, also perished. We mourn their loss today on the kind of day Rob Moroso liked best, a race day in the Carolinas.
In September, a traffic accident outside Mooresville claimed the lives of NASCAR rookie contender Rob Moroso and nursing assistant Tammy Williams. Toxicologists reported that Moroso was driving under the influence, his blood alcohol level more than twice the legal limit, when Moroso skidded into oncoming traffic, colliding with Williams' car. As described in NASCAR Man History's video on the subject, the accident led to increased scrutiny over the off-track driving habits of stock car racers. Among those scrutinized was Sachs, who just days before Moroso's accident was found guilty of DUI stemming from his blood alcohol reading during a traffic stop that January. Combined with a terrible test session at Charlotte where he crashed 2 cars, forcing the team to withdraw, Sachs faced even more scrutiny. While it's not clear if there was a causal link between these investigations and what happened next, Slim Fast withdrew their sponsorship over the off-season, and the Newman Hendrick team shut down. Sachs has credited his wife Vicky for maintaining a positive outlook in what can be often a brutal and unforgiving sport. She undoubtedly helped him pick up the pieces in 1991. Slim Fast left so late into the off-season that no other rides were available. Sachs had just 3 weeks to assemble a team of his own to head down to Daytona for the start of the 91 season. He bought a Chevrolet from Hendrick, an engine from Keith Dorton, and Gary DeHart agreed to serve as his crew chief once more. Maintaining another valuable connection from earlier in his career, Sachs worked out a deal with Billy Dingman to prepare cars in his shop at Winter Park, now left vacant as Dingman had closed his own team. The car arrived in Daytona in a rented hauler that still carried driver Mickey Gibbs's name on the outside, perhaps from the closed Winkle team. Sponsorship remained scarce, only a small logo at the edge of the hood from Diamond Ridge Racing out of Houston. He wasn't the only driver in such a situation. In response to the war in the Persian Gulf, R.J. Reynolds orchestrated the Operation Desert Support Program, putting logos for the 5 branches of the military on 5 unsponsored cars entered in the 500. Sachs, still running the number 18, represented the U.S. Navy. The car looked fast and would even get some more track time, as his pole in the Firecracker 400 put him into the 14-car field for the Busch Clash. He drew the 8th spot, then fell to 13th at the end of the first segment. Segment 2 was set by an inversion, putting Segment 1 winner Dale Earnhardt in last place and Sachs on the outside pole alongside Jeff Bodine. For 2 laps, Sachs and Bodine battled door to door, only to have their doors blown off by Dale Earnhardt.
Dale Earnhardt, look at him, he's going for the lead.
And has it. In 2 laps, Earnhardt thrusts himself right through the field, bottom of the racetrack.
Sachs fell to 10th, but most importantly with his car in one piece. Competing under race conditions must have helped for Thursday, as he was just 43rd in third-round qualifying and needed to finish 15th or better in his 125 to make the 500. He accomplished this, taking the checkered flag in 13th to secure the 25th spot on the starting grid. But on lap 21 of the 500 itself, Sachs collided with Rick Wilson in turn 2, leaving him in last place. His car totaled, Sachs didn't enter the number 18 in any more races that season. When Rob Moroso competed for Rookie of the Year in 1990, his closest competitor drove for a team called Close Racing. Derek Close took over the family textile business, Springs Industries, after the passing of his father Bill. At age 30, the younger Close had a passion for racing and assembled a team around dirt track racer and fellow South Carolina native Jack Pennington, who he teamed with crew chief Tony Furr. In 1989, Pennington earned a 7th place finish in his 2nd ARCA start at Talladega, finished 3rd in his 5th Busch Grand National start at Darlington, and by the end of the year made his first 2 Cup starts in the number 47 Oldsmobile. With scattershot sponsorship from Kanawha Insurance, Pennington waged a tight battle with the heavily favored Moroso, the previous year's Busch Series champion. But after Moroso's death, Pennington and Close scaled back their effort, allowing Moroso to win the Rookie of the Year award posthumously. In 1991, Pennington was replaced by another rookie in Rich Bickle, who up to that point had qualified for 3 races in his own car, including the previous year's Daytona 500. Bickle failed to qualify for the 1991 running of the Great American Race, wasn't entered at Richmond, then in the next 3 races at Rockingham, Atlanta, and Darlington, finished just 26th, 34th, and 24th. By May, Bickle was out of the ride. "We think a lot of Rich Bickle," said Close. but at $35,000 to $40,000 a race, we thought someone with experience was the best way to go. It takes 3 to 5 years for a rookie to run up front and win in Winston Cup racing. We needed positive results before then. Winkle didn't hold a grudge against Close, but was frank in his assessment of the team. How they ran engines with 30 fewer horsepower than most of the other teams. The guy didn't want to spend any money, said Winkle. It's pretty bad when you have to call him to buy $40 worth of parts, and he was in New York at the time for business with Springs Industries. At North Wilkesboro, Winkle was running 8th fastest in practice, but failed to qualify because 2 of his spark plugs were soaked in oil. As Winkle returned to the All-Pro Series, he wished Greg Sachs the best, acknowledging that Sachs had more experience in these kinds of cars. Kanawha Insurance did the same, printing ads promoting Sachs's driver appearances at fan events. But in the final 20 races of the 91 season, Sachs failed to finish 6 times and failed to qualify for another 3. Derek Close shut down the team early in the 92 season, by which point Sachs had been replaced by Buddy Baker, one of his growing number of past team owners. Larry Hedrick was the owner of Statesville Auto Auction, which by the early 1990s wholesaled more than 2,000 cars a week to car dealers. That business became affiliated with Mannheim Auctions, which still operates there today. Hedrick too had a race team, as in 1990 he began preparing cars in a garage near the auction. What began as Hedrick Racing was soon renamed Larry Hedrick Motorsports, each Chevrolet bearing a logo where the L and H are arranged to form the team's car number 41. Hedrick's team made its debut in the night race at Bristol on August 25, 1990, where Larry Pearson qualified 26th and finished in 14th. The team impressed early, finishing in the top 20 in all 4 of its starts that year. In 1991, Hedrick became just the second Winston Cup team to be sponsored by Kellogg's Corn Flakes. Pearson qualified for 11 of his 14 attempts, but a rash of 7 DNFs handed them the NASCAR championship. For 1992, Hedrick wanted to compete in his first full season in the Winston Cup Series and hoped to finish in the top 20 in points. To this end, they hired Greg Sachs and reunited him with Dennis Conner, his crew chief at Hendrick Motorsports, both during and after the filming of Days of Thunder. The Hedrick team also boasted Harry Hyde, Conner's mentor and fellow Hendrick alumni, as racing director. Hyde improved the Hedrick team's engines with up to 30 added horsepower, but Conner feared this could lead to more mechanical issues. Nevertheless, the media pointed to the Hedrick team as one to watch in 1992. Sachs looked strong early, matching his pace from his time with the Dingman Brothers in 1988. Sachs ranked 23rd in the Daytona 500 qualifying, then in his 125-mile qualifier surged to a 4th place finish, putting the Kellogg's car 9th on the grid for the Daytona 500. This happened to be the same starting spot from which Sachs won in the summer of '85, and from which both Junior Johnson and Pete Hamilton won the 500. Sachs didn't win this time, but did finish a respectable 14th. But in the next 11 races, the feared engine problems came back to bite him 4 times, including after just 2 laps around Sears Point. In August, after wiping out a car in practice at Watkins Glen, another crash 4 laps into the race at Michigan put Sachs in last place for a second time in 1992, and he was abruptly fired by the team. The change happened so suddenly that this time, Sachs considered suing the team. Things hadn't gone as well as we'd hoped, said Hedrick. In fact, there was sort of the sense of looking down the barrel of a rifle, so we felt trying something different was in the interest of everyone. We wanted the best driver available. This set in motion a particularly surprising driver change. Team racing director Harry Hyde had earlier in his career worked on the K&K Insurance Dodge team, a team that Bobby Isaac drove to the 1970 Cup Series championship, and later Dave Marcus piloted to 4 of his 5 career wins. It was Hyde who urged the team to give the 51-year-old Marcus a chance to drive, knowing he'd run all but 1 season since 1979 in his own car with limited funding and hadn't won in more than a decade. Dave is a terrific guy, said Hyde. I really hope to convince him to drive for us the balance of this year and all of next year. This is a man that gives it everything he's got every lap, and we feel lucky to get him. We think Dave, with his experience, is our trump card for some good runs. Marcus accepted, but stopped short of selling his equipment at Marcus Auto Racing. "I've got a couple of employees I need to look after," he said. Marcus put fellow Wisconsin driver Jim Sauter in the number 71 until his future plans were worked out. For now, it was a 4-race deal, but there were also discussions of expanding this through the rest of the year or into the 1993 season. Also on the table was a possible manufacturer switch from Chevrolet to Ford. "I told them yesterday I'd do Richmond," said Marcus. "They want me to do the rest of the season, and they want to sign me to a contract for all of '93. Chances look pretty good, I'll do it." Marcus had been hired for Bristol, as it was believed to be one of his best tracks, but the summer race in 1992 was also the track's first with a new and unusually bumpy concrete surface, and the entire weekend was under threat of rain due to the lingering effects of Hurricane Andrew. Marcus qualified 20th for the race, but ended up crashing well before the halfway point, leaving him in last place as well. He bounced back to finish 18th in the Southern 500, but the races after saw him finish no better than Sachs had before. At Charlotte in October, Marcus still believed he'd be running for Hedrick for the rest of the year, so he planned to have Sauter drive his number 71 in the upcoming races at Rockingham and Atlanta. To save money on the long trip to Phoenix, he'd lend his car number to Martin Bahrain's Team Ireland entry, driven by Bobby Hillin Jr., but it was at that Charlotte race that Team Ireland shut down after Bahrain disputed NASCAR's disqualification over a carburetor infraction. Then Marcus was released by Hedrick, bringing Sachs back on board for Rockingham before Hut Strickland rounded out the season. At the end of the year, Kellogg's Corn Flakes had left the Hedrick team to join Terry Labonte at Billy Hagan's effort. But unlike many of Sachs's previous departures, this was not the end for the Hedrick team. In fact, Hedrick's number 41 team would remain in the Cup Series for another 8 seasons. The 1993 season marked the first time in Sachs's career that he wasn't even entered in the Daytona 500. His year didn't begin until the season's 4th round in Atlanta, which was to be P.J. Jones's series debut with the Melling Racing team. When the race was postponed due to a blizzard, Jones couldn't run the race due to a scheduling conflict with the 12 hours of Sebring. Sachs got the call to drive and climbed from 40th and last on the grid to finish in 23rd. 5 rounds later, Sachs made his way to TriStar Motorsports, replacing a fired Bobby Hamilton in the Country Time Lemonade Ford. As I described in my video on that sponsor's history, Sachs's lone highlight was a 6th-place finish in the July race at Talladega. This followed his spin off the nose of Dale Earnhardt in the Coca-Cola 600, a moment for which Earnhardt was penalized, only to come back and win the race. In the Pepsi 400, Sachs climbed from 23rd on the grid to 7th before he fell back to 15th at the checkered flag. "We had to readjust the setup," he said after that race. "We just missed on the chassis. I gave it the best ride I could. All in all, it was a step in the right direction. We finished on the lead lap, and you can't win races until you do that." Sachs failed to qualify for the fall race at North Wilkesboro, then heading into Phoenix faced another abrupt exit from a team. In the closing weeks of the season, it was rumored that Loy Allen Jr.'s team, Allen Motorsports, would merge with TriStar Motorsports, with sponsorship from Hooters restaurants. But following a meeting at Rockingham, it was instead reported that Allen Motorsports would shut down, and its crew members weren't offered spots at TriStar. This put Loy Allen Jr. in the number 68 at Phoenix. But word of the Allen team's closure was also premature, as the team would still run the season finale at Atlanta. This put Allen back in his team's number 37, and Sachs back in the number 68 for a 24th place finish. One of the most surprising teams during this same period was Radius Motorsports, the partnership between veteran driver D.K. Ulrich and Ray DeWitt. It was with Ulrich's number 55 team that Ted Musgrave developed into a weekly contender during his rookie season in 1991, when he narrowly lost top rookie honors to Bobby Hamilton. In 1992, Ulrich joined forces with DeWitt, who gave Musgrave his first Cup ride after the death of Rich Vogler 2 years earlier. This yielded 7 top 10 finishes, with a best run of 5th at Pocono, and he was briefly considered to replace Richard Petty in the STP Pontiac. By 1993, Musgrave stayed with the team and was threatening to score his first Winston Cup win. Part of this success was due to the support of Doug Bowell, whose company Jasper Engines and Transmissions had steadily increased its technical support of the team. Jasper had been joined by US Air as the team's sponsor for the '93 season, when the team committed to Ford after previously swapping between Chevrolets, Pontiacs, and Oldsmobiles. But by 1994, there were simply too many cooks in the kitchen, and the group split up. Musgrave left to drive for Roush, with the Family Channel coming over as sponsor from Jeff Bodine Racing. Vowell and Ulrich split away from DeWitt's number 55 to form Jasper Motorsports, which kept Jasper and US Air as sponsors of their number 77 Ford. While Jimmy Hensley landed in an unsponsored DeWitt car, the Jasper team hired Sachs, who for the first time in his Winston Cup career would finally compete in every points race that season. He'd do so not only in the same car number he'd run for DiGard in the second half of the '85 season, but as one of the teams running Hoosier tires in the reignited tire war against Goodyear. This turned out to be Sachs's best ride since the Newman-Hendrick deal. He began the year with a strong 6th-place finish in the Daytona 500, finished 7th in Atlanta, and led 3 laps in Darlington. He then survived the chaos at Bristol to take 11th, then took a season-best 6th in Talladega. He raced his way into the Winston Select All-Star race, taking 2nd in the Open.
Smiling face with Greg Sachs, but you knew you had a fast car.
Well, I tell you, Glenn, we sure did. You know, that US Air Jasper engine Ford Thunderbird, woo, let's go. The car's a little tight in the beginning there. When we had that big wreck there in the middle, we freed the car up a little, and I knew we were home free from there. Right now, you know, with these 20 minutes between races, I really wanted to make a gear change, but we just couldn't take the chance that we wouldn't get it done in time. So we've gone with what we got. We're going to go out and run them hard and see if we can't come home in the front of this Winston Select.
It looked like you and Schrader were having a lot of fun those last couple laps.
Oh, man, it's pretty neat. You know, I had the bottom groove, and Kenny looked like he was pretty good on top, and I was going to give him the top, and he took it. We ran side by side through 1 and 2, and he got the run on me and beat me down there. Kenny said after he said, I think I went into a little easy in 3 and 4, and I stuck back by him. It was close to the line, but we were happy to finish 2nd.
Well, he didn't know whether he finished 2nd or 3rd, but I bet you knew, didn't you?
I knew, and I think he knew, too.
Morgan Shepherd down on the bottom, and the number 21 of the Wood Brothers. Sachs to the front. What happened to Kyle Petty? Side by side, and Greg Sachs goes around and hard into the wall as he and Mark Martin got together. Nemechek just slips past Mark Martin.
He even qualified for the inaugural Brickyard 400, putting the US Air car 13th on the grid, leading 4 laps and coming home in 18th. The team donated a replica of Sachs's car to the IMS Museum. But the Jasper team struggled terribly in the season's second half, tumbling out of the top 20 in points amidst a series of crashes and mechanical failures. Still, Sachs won his 2nd career pole in the season finale at Atlanta, shattering Loy Allen Jr.'s track record by more than 5 full miles per hour.
Greg Sachs clinched the spot in the Busch Clash with his first pole of '94, blistering Atlanta's repaved racing surface at 185.830 miles per hour.
For a US Air Jasper Engines team, you know, it couldn't be a better day. You know, Jasper gave me the power. Tony, for my crew chief, gave me a great Hallman chassis. And in that Ford Thunderbird, we couldn't have done it without it. The aerodynamic balance is so perfect on that car, front to rear, that I was able to run wide open around this track at Atlanta Motor Speedway. I mean, what an awesome feeling.
Sachs led the field for 24 of the first 75 laps until once again, fate had other plans.
Well, something happens to the right front. He loses the air in the right front tire. He goes in the wall. Now we'll follow, and we see, let's see, some debris.
To make matters worse, Rusty Wallace ran over a brake caliper that fell from Sachs's wrecking car, costing Rusty 2nd in the final point standings. Sachs's performance wasn't enough to keep him with the team, and by January of 1995, he was out, replaced by road racer Davy Jones. Sachs next found his way to Sabco Racing, which 2 years earlier expanded into a 2-car operation. Joining Kyle Petty in the flagship number 42 Mellow Yellow Pontiac for the '93 season was a number 40, to be driven by rookie contender and former Busch Series driver Kenny Wallace. Wallace brought with him his Busch sponsorship from Dirt Devil vacuum cleaners, and he'd be teamed with crew chief Jeff Hammond, who parted ways with Darrell Waltrip midway through the '92 season. Hammond remained as active on the team as he had with DW, serving as both team manager and jackman. After a difficult 1993, where Wallace finished 3rd in the rookie standings behind Jeff Gordon and Bobby Labonte, driver and team parted ways, and Dirt Devil left as sponsor. Bobby Hamilton signed to drive the number 40, but arrived at Speedweeks '94 in a car without a primary sponsor. But that changed by the Daytona 500. Kendall Oil, an associate backer of both Hamilton and Petty, stepped up its backing and became the team's primary sponsor. Soon other companies joined, including Zippo Lighters and Case Knives, each logo decorating a sharp black and white scheme with red and yellow stripes. On August 14, 1994, when the Cup Series was in Watkins Glen, the number 40 team gained a new investor in Dick Brooks, who purchased a 50% interest in the team. Like Sachs, Brooks was an upset winner in the Cup Series. In 1973, he took the checkered flag at Talladega, scoring the last NASCAR victory for Plymouth. Finishing second that day was Buddy Baker. That turned out to be Brooks's only win in 358 career starts. After his last start in 1985, which came with Rick Hendrick's first R&D team, Brooks became a pit reporter for MRN Radio and a businessman. Among his holdings were 10 car dealerships, a hotel, and a 1,000-acre cattle ranch. By the September race at Dover, Brooks was a listed owner of a Cup team for the first time in 20 years. Hamilton finished in the top 20 in 4 of the last 6 races, but was out at the end of the year. In came Greg Sachs. "Greg is a hard charger," said Brooks. "He can hustle a car around the track, and I like that. We share the same philosophy. We were looking for a driver that we could put in the car and turn loose. That's exactly what we've found." "Greg is a competitor," added Jeff Hammond. "He still has a burning desire to perform and to run well. Greg knows how to get speed out of the car. He likes to go fast. He's very heady. He knows how to run in traffic. The fast tracks don't intimidate him, and he has the experience on the short tracks dating back to his modified days. Our preparation, combined with Greg's experience, determination, and a positive attitude, is what we need to produce a successful season." Thanks to his pole in the 1994 season finale, Sachs would get a head start on the 95 season in the Busch Clash, but during inspection, NASCAR found 18 pounds of loose lead weight in Sachs's car, which then crashed on the first lap of the Clash.
Jack Roush car.
Whoa, we got
into the wall. Hard hit on Greg Sachs, car number 40. Caution coming out front and gone.
He and Mark Martin tangled, and Mark is spinning around on farther down the track. Wow.
Caution out.
He did hit the wall hard, but fortunately he's apparently okay. He's already unbuckled his safety net. That's one of the things they're told in the drivers' meeting. If you're okay, unbuckle that safety net so the safety crew will know that, and then if there are other drivers involved in the accident, then they could go to them.
What started that is a car got down on the apron going into 3 over there. They're about 3 wide, and I'm not sure who it was. It was either Ricky Rudd or Loy Allen. And that got a little crowded going into turn 3 over there and sent cars into each other.
Jeff Hammond was fined $5,000. In the 125s, Sachs suffered nose damage when he bumped Phil Parsons while trying to avoid a wreck. The damage was just enough for Morgan Shepherd to catch Sachs on the final lap of the race, knocking him out of the final transfer spot and the 500 field. Already, the team had fallen short of its first goal to make all the races in 1995, and the next week at Rockingham did not go much better.
What a wreck.
That is Greg Sachs in the number 40 car. He has gotten hard into Jimmy Hensley. Ford Burton has spun. Dave Marcus is in it. An incredibly hard hit for Greg Sachs.
That was an extremely hard lick there. I thought Jimmy Hensley was going over just for a second. The car got extremely high in the air and run along on the nose there.
No, not everybody is.
Oh, me. That's ugly from any sight.
And Sachs had made a whole lane change, seeing the spinning car and trying to get away from it. Watch and listen.
Sachs walked away, but the wreck aggravated his neck he strained from his accident in the Clash. And in the coming weeks, he failed to qualify for another 3 of the season's first 14 races before Sabates and Brooks let him go in June. But the team's problems continued. 5 other drivers would take turns driving the Kendall car for the rest of the season, but combined, they failed to qualify another 5 times and only once finished better than 21st. By season's end, Brooks sold his interest back to Sabates. Now firmly in the role as journeyman driver, Sachs picked up whatever ride he could. had to be comfortable racing without a contract. In between, he returned to Florida to operate the Miami Speed Racing School at the new Homestead track, where he held classes in the middle of the week. One of the courses was offered as a prize in a sweepstakes by Sega to promote their iconic game Daytona USA. If I weren't here at the track, I'd probably be down there tuning on my Miami Speed driving school cars, said Sachs. We're ready to open up again on August 10th. The Homestead Motorsports Complex has just been repaved by the same people who did the Indianapolis Motor Speedway's repaving. I'm real anxious to get back on the track. We've got a lot of schools scheduled on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. I did that when I didn't have a ride. I want to be here on weekends at the Winston Cup tracks, not down at Homestead. In his return to the Pepsi 400 in 1995, Sachs made his only start for Junior Johnson, taking Elton Sawyer's place in the number 27 Hooters Ford. He finished in 17th. 2 races later, he qualified for his second straight Brickyard 400, this time driving for Dean Myers, whose number 32 Fina Lance Chevrolet was previously run by Chuck Bown after his return from his injury at Pocono. Sachs closed the 1995 season driving the number 31 Hardy Chevrolet, owned by A.G. Dillard, sharing seat time with Gary Bradbury. This seat had been left open after Ward Burton left to join Bill Davis Racing. Sachs failed to qualify for 3 more races during this span. Dillard's and Myers' teams didn't return to racing in 1996, and Johnson's number 27 was sold to David Blair. In 96, Sachs didn't return until the Winston Select Open in May, his last start in the event, where he finished next to last in his own car, a number 35 Chevrolet, sponsored by his racing school. He then ran the June race in Dover, where he took 27th in a one-off, replacing Robert Presley in the number 33 Skull Bandit Chevrolet, not long before Leo Jackson handed the team to Andy Petrie. In July, another Pepsi 400 at Daytona presented the opportunity to drive for Gary Bechtel at Diamond Ridge Motorsports, his first start in the Flintstones car for Cartoon Network Wacky Racing. After trailing smoke in the early laps, a mid-race crash with Kenny Wallace left him 39th, but he saw potential in the team. "This team and I work well together," he said on July 20th. "Bill Engel, the crew chief, and all the guys are fun to work with. Heck, whenever you run pretty good, it's a lot of fun." He was also asked if there was any pressure. "I think 5 years ago I would have said this is too much pressure, but today I don't think it makes any difference at all. What is a contract anyway? It's just a piece of paper to be broken or fight about later. It's just something to sue with. If I run fast, I'll be here. If I don't run fast, run up front and finish good, I'll be gone." This also opened the opportunity to return to the Busch Series. In 1995, Sachs entered his own car in 5 races, but finished no better than 30th, and he failed to qualify at Talladega. Now, Gary Bechtel had an open seat for the return to Alabama in the number 29, sponsored by World Championship Wrestling. Sachs qualified 7th, led twice in the early stages, and in the final laps was all over pole sitter Joe Nemechek.
Information, he can tell his driver when they're pitting or what they've done on a pit stop, or in that case, what gear the other guy has in.
10 to go, signal just went out.
Still there. Boy, I don't know. I don't think Joe was wanting that to happen.
No, he definitely did not want that.
Still there.
Sachs taking over first.
That'll allow Michael Waltrip to catch up.
That's going to pull that whole pack right back up there.
Nemechek to the inside. That's where we're going to go. Nemechek for second spot. Closing up on Sachs.
He's got second. Now, if Joy is smart, he'll push him along here, and they'll work on.
Now look at Sachs. He's driving. He's driving his rear view mirror. He's going to go everywhere Nemechek's going to go. Watch it.
If he doesn't get him here pretty quick, then Sachs might be able to hold him off.
Sachs throwing the block as it came out of 2.
He did. Big time block.
Nemechek pulling up.
It's going to be a 2-car shootout here, and it's just
Nemechek fakes to the to the inside.
Sachs has just got he's got him covered. He ain't going to let him by.
Here they come, down to the line, and it's going to be Greg Sachs in first. Nemechek in second. LaJoie's going to come across in third. Terry Labonte in fourth, and Bobby Labonte in fifth.
At long last, more than a decade after his breakthrough win, Sachs was back in victory lane. "It's an unbelievable feeling when you're close to 200 miles per hour heading into a turn," said Sachs that October. Your mind tells you that you cannot take the turn at that speed without crashing and maybe dying, but you have to know that it can be done, that it's a matter of mind over matter. But, as had been the case for so much of his career, even this win did not land him a long-term ride with Diamond Ridge. Talladega marked his only Busch Series start with the team, and despite a 10th place qualifying run, putting him into his third straight Brickyard 400, he made just 6 starts in the Cartoon Network car, with no finishes better than 25th. By August, barely a month after the win, he and team owner Gary Bechtel had parted ways. Sachs did end up picking up a Busch Series ride with team owner Mike Laughlin, but this too was a team on the verge of closing, and he remained and also ran for many of those starts. But then came Harry Rainier, the same person who sold Sachs the car he drove to his only Cup win. In October 1988, 3 years after Sachs's win, Rainier was out of the sport, having sold his number 28 team to his engine builder Robert Yates. But in 1996, he was back, partnered with businessman Tom Walsh to enter some Busch Series races. The team hired another up-and-comer in Tony Stewart, marking the USAC and IRL champions' first exposure to stock car racing. The plan had been to bring Stewart to Winston Cup for the '96 finale in Atlanta, but it was decided to keep him in the Busch Series for at least another year. Elton Sawyer got the ride and finished in 23rd. But for '97, when Rainier reunited with his team's longtime sponsor Hardee's, Rainier hired Sachs. Rainier paired the driver with crew chief Tommy Baldwin Jr., whose father raced against Sachs in the NASCAR Modifieds. With that, Sachs let his son Bryan run the racing school in Florida and turned his focus back to racing. The car ran 9th fastest in qualifying for the Daytona 500, but Sachs crashed out of his first 500 start in 3 years.
Everything looks good, and then all of a sudden, Greg comes out of the pack of cars there. Apparently got touched a little bit, buddy, and just sent him down to the inside.
You know, we see this happen so many times. The car is on the outside, does not realize somebody's just behind him, and starts to pull over, and they make contact, and this is the end results.
The team then struggled for speed in a test at Darlington and failed to qualify for 2 of its first 10 races. Ironically, one of these DNQs did not come at Sears Point, where Lance Hooper got the car into the show, while 12 other teams were sent home. Even then, the engine only lasted 40 laps, leaving Hooper in 42nd. The next week at Talladega, Sachs was again on film duty, as his number 20 stood in for actor Ben Browder's character DJ Tucker in the TV movie Steel Chariots.
Stay on the wall. Okay, DJ, come on, unbuckle. You're coming out.
I can't cave. I gotta give it a shot.
You're gonna cave if you don't let Brett get in this car and finish a race for you. Your day is done. Now climb out of the car.
Come on, DJ, get out. You're costing us time. I'm finishing this race.
Years ago, Greg did a lot of driving, and on top of the car, it didn't say Greg Sachs, it said Cold Trickle. That was for Days of Thunder. Today, it says DJ Tucker. He's driving for another movie, but tomorrow, he's driving for Greg Sachs and Rainier Walsh Racing. And Greg, I got to ask you, the car awfully good and awfully fast. You're 4th quickest in this session.
Well, I'll tell you, Jerry, this Hardee's Ford is one mean machine. I'm out there having a lot of fun. I don't even know if I'm going to go back out. They may send me back out, but I'm satisfied. I'm ready for tomorrow.
How about the left foot? We told everybody at home you're driving with a pin sticking out of the left foot that's been wrapped and bandaged and part of a Simpson shoe. 3 screws. Can you make it all day?
Well, I'm using that extra weight to push on the right foot to get that gas pedal down good and hard. I'm fine in the car, Jerry. We look forward to an exciting tomorrow.
Behind the scenes, the Rainier team was in trouble. That same '97 season, his Truck Series effort with driver Toby Porter had also failed to make 2 of its 5 attempts. And so, as filming wrapped with a 25th place finish for Sachs on Sunday, Rainier closed both his teams. So ended a career in team ownership that dated back to 1967. Rainier died 2 years later. Once again, Sachs reunited with a familiar face. The previous fall, after his release from Diamond Ridge, Sachs completed the '96 season by rejoining Felix Sabates in the number 40 car, taking a 24th place finish in Charlotte and a season-best 18th in the finale at Atlanta, where he qualified in 8th.
Sachs on the outside of row 1. There's a 39-year-old driver, and Benny Parsons, they got to be tickled with that run.
Hey, what's up with this 2nd place?
Well, not too shabby. The First Union Pontiac did a real good job. You know, we didn't have a real smooth practice session.
I only had about 3 laps on the track, really, only 1 hot lap. So I didn't know exactly what to expect out of here, but Pontiac drove great today, and I might have had a little left there.
Now, in the first part of '97, Sabates called on Sachs to drive the number 40 again, this time to relieve Robbie Gordon, who had suffered burns during the Indianapolis 500. But Sabates wasn't sure the deal would happen, as Sachs was rumored to be in talks to rejoin Jasper Motorsports to replace Bobby Hillin Jr. Hillin had already been released by the Jasper team, but was still driving the 77 as he'd previously become part owner of the team that had just fired him. As Hillin continued to race the Jasper car, Sachs rejoined Sabates and immediately qualified 4th at Pocono, but he crashed on lap 9 and finished last, then the next week in Michigan failed to qualify. Robbie returned for the following week's race, the first Cup event at the California Speedway, only to be injured again in a practice crash. Back came Sachs, who not only qualified Robbie's short track car into the race, but ran fastest in second round qualifying. In fact, Sachs ran faster than teammate Joe Nemechek, who earned the pole. "You know the baseball leagues playing against each other," said Sachs. "Well, I'm the pinch hitter, the designated driver." Sachs finished 27th, but Robbie healed well enough to return the week after in Daytona, and Sachs was once again out of a ride. The next stop for Sachs came with Joe Falk, whose team, by July, had failed to qualify for 9 of the first 16 races of the season with Mike Wallace and now Loy Allen Jr. Sachs added 2 more DNQs in the return to Pocono and Darlington, but in between got their unsponsored car into the Brickyard 400. And while he only finished 31st that day, Sachs had managed to qualify for each of the first 4 Winston Cup races at Indianapolis, and did so each time with a different team. Still, Falk replaced Sachs with Ron Hornaday Jr., then Kevin LePage, leading to the start of LePage's rookie season in 1998. Sachs was out of a ride for the next 2 months before Bud Moore came calling for a one-off in the fall race at Charlotte, but the Daytona USA-sponsored Ford missed the show. By then, Sabates had parted ways with Robbie Gordon, putting Sachs back into the Coors Light Chevrolet for a 3rd time. This time around, the challenge was to make the final 4 races of the season. He made 3 of those starts, missing the season finale at Atlanta, and finished no better than 21st. By the time that 1997 season had ended, Sachs had failed to qualify for 7 of the 19 races he attempted, picking up at least 1 DNQ for 4 different teams. But it was also during this ragged season that Sachs performed some broadcasting work with TBS, including the second Pocono race.
Yates teams, they race to win. Ernie Irving, he's focused, he's ready. Dale Jarrett, 4th in points, 165 out of 1st. He feels he has to win to pressure the top 3.
And fortunately, the fans weren't the only ones watching. Things seemed to come full circle for Sachs in 1998, just in time for NASCAR's 50th anniversary season. In 1985, he'd driven a car once piloted by Cale Yarborough to victory lane, with Harry Rainier selling it to him, and Sachs would now drive for Yarborough himself. Cale Yarborough branched out from the Rainier team in 1987 to form his own team, where he gradually scaled back his part-time schedule into retirement. With Hardee's still his sponsor at the time, Yarborough first handed the wheel to Dale Jarrett. Then, after new backing from the Phillips 66 Corporation, brought on such drivers as Dick Trickle and Lake Speed, and even tried to sign Jeff Gordon. In 1992, Yarborough's team won a near uncontested Rookie of the Year title after Jimmy Hensley replaced a struggling Chad Little. Derek Cope signed on in 1993, bringing new backing from Bojangles Restaurants after a strong run for much of that year's Daytona 500. The next year, Jeremy Mayfield replaced Cope at mid-season, only to swap rides with John Andretti after RCA sponsored the team. It was with Yarborough's car and the RCA sponsorship in the 1997 Pepsi 400, 12 years after Sachs's win, that Andretti scored his own upset victory. But this celebration was also short-lived. RCA left as sponsor at season's end, and Andretti left the team along with crew chief Tony Furr. Just like that, Yarborough's new $1.3 million, 30,000 square foot shop felt empty. On December 10, 1997, Yarborough announced he had a new sponsor. Thorn Apple Valley, a lunch meat company from Michigan, would back the '98 team for the full season. though Yarborough still hoped to land some associate backers. Joel Dorfman, the company's president and CEO, had first considered sponsoring NASCAR for their upcoming 50th anniversary until Yarborough stepped in about sponsoring his team. "I know very little about stock car racing," said Dorfman, "and what I know, I've learned in the last month. But if you asked me to name 3 people in NASCAR, I'd have said Cale Yarborough, Richard Petty, and Bobby Allison. And when someone like Cale asks to speak with you and tells you, 'Joel, we will have a team that will be competitive,' well, I put my faith in him." It was an unusual arrangement. Yarborough had landed a sponsor before he'd hired both a driver and crew chief. To fill those spots, Yarborough asked his team who they should hire. According to him, the vote was unanimous: Greg Sacks as driver and Mike Hillman as crew chief. Sacks and Hillman had worked together at Sabco the year before, and the team was eager to build on that. Sacks then spoke with Yarborough that winter, and the two worked out a deal in 8 days. While other teams rolled out the newly approved Ford Taurus, Sacks remained in a Thunderbird for the Bud Shootout qualifier. This car earned the fastest lap in Monday's first day of a 3-day test. Sacks put up a lap of 190.154 miles per hour over second-ranked Rusty Wallace's Taurus, which clocked in at 189.546. Sacks drew outside pole for the qualifier and finished in 9th, then returned to the Taurus for the 500. He ran 12th fastest in qualifying, lining him up 6th in the second 125-mile qualifier, where he finished in 11th. But the car struggled with pace on Sunday, finishing 27 laps down in 39th. Over the next 5 races, Sacks qualified 12th at Darlington and 11th at Bristol, but finished no better than 25th. Heading into Texas, he was still looking for his first lead lap finish of 1998. On lap 135 of the Texas 500, Sacks was running on the lead lap in the 20th spot.
Trouble. Greg Sacks. Hard in the wall, turn 2. No other contact. Everybody slows up, and the caution flag will wave for the 5th time today.
Sacks was one of those 24 cars on the lead lap.
Former Firecracker 400 winner. And named by a poll at Stafford Speedway as one of the top 50 modified NASCAR drivers of all time. But having a tough day today.
It was another brutal wreck, and this time Sacks was hurt. He'd suffered a spinal cord injury. "I couldn't walk," he said. "It took quite a while. In fact, I left the hospital in a wheelchair. The blessing was that I had no head injury. The doctor told me right away that I have no more risk today than I did the day before the accident. I didn't have any structural damage. I didn't have a halo or anything like that. I just had edema from stretching my neck." The race ended Sacks' season. He'd be replaced by Rich Bickle, the same driver Sacks had replaced at Close Racing back in 1991, and among the drivers who replaced Sacks in the Kendall car in 1995. After all that Sacks had endured, hardly anyone would have criticized him for walking away from the sport, but he remained as determined as ever to get back behind the wheel. "My only concern about getting back into racing was control of my legs," he said. "I had a hard time with that. My doctor didn't know that I was getting out of control. When I first got hurt, I left the hospital in a wheelchair. I couldn't walk for a good while. Eventually I got to walking, and then to moving, and then a major step was to step off the curb and have control to get down. And then it was if you had to take a leap over the curb, and how do you do it and control your legs?" Soon Sacks was running 3 miles a day, 3 days a week. "Some people think I'm crazy, but I tell them that when my opportunity comes, I'm going to be ready for it." In October 1999, Sacks made his first NASCAR attempt since his accident, when he qualified Frederick Maggio's number 90 Coin Textile Services Chevrolet into the fall race at Charlotte. He finished 34th, completing all but 5 laps and finishing under power. In 2000, he picked up sponsorship from Island Oasis drink mixes and attempted to qualify cars for Petty Huggins Motorsports in both the Busch and Cup Series openers at Daytona. It was another rough start. In Monday morning practice for the Daytona 500, he collided with Jeff Fuller in this violent accident in Turn 3. While Fuller suffered a sore neck, Sacks escaped serious injury, and his team acquired a backup car from Morgan McClure Motorsports with an engine from Felix Sabates. but after failing to make the Busch Series race, he finished just 25th of the 28 cars in his qualifier, missing the cut for the 500. In 2001, Sachs returned to the Featherlight Modified Tour at Loudon, driving the car with which Jerry Marquis won in the season opener at South Boston. Ed Partridge, the owner of a trucking company in Sachs's native Long Island, purchased the car, and members of Sachs's old crew helped repair it. He finished in 23rd. In 2002, Sachs joined forces with Lauren Fossey, president of LEF Enterprises in New Jersey. Fossey looked to promote her upcoming board game, Franchise It, which Sachs called the Monopoly of the New Millennium. At the Coffee Beanery convention at Walt Disney's Coronado Springs Resort near Orlando, Sachs and Fossey unveiled the number 05 car of Team Franchise It, Sachs Racing. The plan was to enter some combination of Busch and Cup races in late 2002, then go full-time in 2003. Sachs contacted at least 2 of his former crew chiefs about joining, and 1 expressed interest. The planned debut moved from the Brickyard 400 to the Fall Charlotte race, and while the show car made another appearance at Burlington County College's Mount Laurel campus, the deal fell apart, and the team never raced. In 2003, Sachs turned his attention to ARCA, rejoining with Bobby Jones, who previously fielded one of his Busch Series entries. Carrying sponsorship from Jones's business, fresh from Florida seafood, Sachs qualified for the ARCA 200 at Daytona and came home a strong 7th. Among his pit crew were members of 5 Off, 5 On, the pit crew school founded by his former crew chief Jeff Hammond. Jones's team planned another 4 to 5 races, including Pocono in July. In a field that included an 18-year-old Kyle Busch, the 50-year-old Sachs overcame a blown engine in practice to qualify in 13th. "I feel like I know this track like the back of my hand," said Sachs. "I know where all the bumps are. I know where I want to enter. I know my apexes and where I want to hit. I'm pretty comfortable here, so that's not an issue. The biggest issue is getting with the new setups, all the different aero packages and softer springs. Last time I ran here was 97. Things have changed since then." Sachs led 5 laps at Pocono, then returned in Chicagoland to qualify outside pole. This time he led 31 of 134 laps before Frank Kimmel made the winning pass with 12 to go. With that boost of confidence, it was time, once again, to return to the Cup Series. Only now do we reach the critical 2004 season, the year of the field fillers. Sachs began the year with Jones's ARCA team, and this time led 12 laps of the ARCA 200 before a crash left him 28th. He also made his first Truck Series attempts that year at Daytona and Atlanta, but each time failed to qualify in Ron Rhodes' number 48 James Western Star Sterling Dodge. He broke through at Texas in June, where he finished 32nd of 34 starters after early transmission trouble. In between, he returned to make a Busch Series start at Dover, where he finished 40th after ignition issues on JD Motorsports' number 0 Race Girl Chevrolet. During qualifying for that Dover race, Jeff Hammond said Sachs was working on a deal to return to the Cup Series, perhaps as soon as Chicagoland in July. This was confirmed on July 2nd. Just like his 1988 ride with the Dingman Brothers, Sachs had started another new team in Central Florida and called it Daytona Speed Incorporated. He joined forces with businessman Ed Robb and friend James Wilsberg, son of his 1982 NASCAR Modified team owner Ernie Wilsberg. Sachs bought cars and equipment from Evernham Motorsports, which was clearing out their old cars to develop their own in-house chassis. He asked if he could be the first guy in line when we start selling cars, said Evernham. "I've known Greg for a long time. He's a good guy. I told him when we start to sell cars, yeah, he could have his first crack at them." The engines would be provided by Mike Edge, who also did the engines for the Dodges at Petty Enterprises. Sachs would also serve as his own crew chief. Daytona Speed Incorporated planned to enter 10 races in 2004, then add a second entry, the number 73, to run in the fall races Dover at Martinsville to prepare for a 2-car effort in 2005. Sponsoring the number 13 Dodge was Vita Coco, a coconut water company out of New York, and Arc de Hooker, a fishing product that safely removed hooks from caught fish. The de Hooker company came from a company co-owned by team owner Ed Robb's son Chris. The team's first of 10 planned attempts did come at Chicagoland.
The number 13, a new team, the ARC de Hooker Vita Coco Dodge. Greg Sachs, the driver, James Wilsberg, the owner. Greg had a lot of success in the modified for the Wilsbergs family, including the Stafford Track Championship, but they're going to be disappointed at 30.17.
Sachs missed the show, ranked second slowest of the 3 DNQs, but bounced back 2 races later in Pocono.
Hey, that's Greg Sachs on the track. That's the completion of his second lap, and Greg Sachs is going to make this race. He has no provisionals, had to get in on speed, 30th, and that's going to get him in.
I think he's going to be about 38th when it's all over and said and done.
Sachs's lap of 156.990 miles per hour was nearly 6 miles per hour off the pole earned by Casey Mears, but enough to take the 38th and final spot on his time. It feels great to make the race on speed, he said. People say you can't do things, but we want to prove that we can. It turned out to be a great day. As to the reason for his return, Sachs said, quote, "My intent is to have the record for the longest number of years between wins. How about that? I want to be in the record books forever. I'm looking to win again." Sachs turned 19 laps in the race and finished 42nd, out with a vibration.
Greg Sachs made his return to NASCAR Next Cup racing last week at Pocono, his first race since 1998. And after that particular entry to turn 1, it might...
Yeah, I was going to say, that is a line I've not seen used today.
That didn't work out well for him. Looking to make his 5th start in the Brickyard 400. What would be his 260th start in Nextel Cup racing. Greg, this team being formed new over this summer. They have plans to run 2 cars the entire season next year. One for a young driver, one for Greg, and they plan to do it out of Daytona Beach, Florida, instead of the Charlotte, North Carolina area where most of the teams are based.
All right, let's see what he did on that first lap.
Got in.
He's 38.
Oh, man, he is juggling down there.
Bumps Hillenberg.
Sachs failed to qualify the next week for Indianapolis. Then he withdrew from Michigan before turning his attention to Richmond. With their base in Florida, the team was fortunate to find themselves outside the evacuation zone for Hurricane Francis, and the shop survived the storm without serious damage. They then failed to qualify for Richmond and the first 2 races of the chase at Loudon and Dover before they came through at Charlotte, this time placing 37th on the grid, where 52 drivers were entered.
Larry, you practice in the daytime, now you got to come out here and qualify at night. What do you do differently? What did you learn? Did you learn anything in the daytime that would help you?
I think the best thing that you could sometimes do is just leave that car in the garage area. You heard Ryan Newman talk about it. These cars pick up so much speed that the real challenge is what the handling characteristics are going to do qualifying. And bottom out, you'll see these cars sparking. But this is such a big weekend for these teams. This is the last Saturday night race of 2004, and this is most of these teams' home racetracks. 70 to 80% of these teams are located right here in the Charlotte area, so this is a big weekend. It's a race that everyone wants to win, and this is a pole night that everybody wants to get this Bud pole.
Like Greg Sachs, this team races out of Central Florida, so they have certainly had a time of it with all of the hurricanes, and that has maybe disrupted their efforts just a bit. His lap 29.62, a little pickup on the second lap.
But let's point out right quick on Sachs right there. I mean, he came from being basically 46th in practice at a 30.14, picking up over a half a second.
Little change under the hood. They have Ernie Elliott engines this week.
Sachs avoided the first lap crash that collected Tony Raines, but fell out with crash damage under the second caution, leaving him 41st. 2 more DNQs followed in Martinsville and Atlanta before the team arrived at their home race in Homestead, the location of Sachs's driving school. While Competitive Edge Motorsports missed the cut, Sachs again improved in qualifying, securing 34th on the grid for the Ford 400.
Mattituck, New York's Greg Sachs in the ARC DeHooker Dodge has just knocked down a lap of 24th quickest, 30.801.
Well before NASCAR's first 10-race chase reached its climax, overheating issues ended Sachs's race after just 3 laps, leaving him next to last ahead of a wrecked Hermie Sadler. At season's end, Daytona Speed Incorporated qualified for 3 Cup Series races and failed to qualify for another 8. Their 41st place run in Charlotte was their best of the season. Unfortunately, Sachs again found himself in the wrong place at the wrong time. Just before preseason testing, he was told by the Robb family that they were parting ways with him and setting up a new race team of their own off Mason Avenue in Daytona Beach. Robb Racing Enterprises would now enter the number 73 Chevrolet, the same team that was supposed to attempt a pair of races in 2004. Instead, the Robbs took back the Arc to Hooker sponsorship and hired Eric McClure to compete for Rookie of the Year. "We fulfilled our financial obligations with Daytona Speed," said Robb, whose team would make exactly one Cup start with McClure before shutting down. Sachs disagreed, saying his deal had been to operate the Daytona Speed team while Robb handled marketing and sponsorships for the number 13. Indeed, coming into the 2005 season, Robb remained a 45% owner of Daytona Speed, but said he had no further interest in Sachs's team. So Sachs enlisted the aid of his sons, Paul and Bryan, to get down to Daytona, his number 13 now unsponsored. They arrived a day late in the testing, and in February were left scrambling all week. Needing to race their way in during the now 150-mile qualifiers, Sachs was swept up in a lap 3 wreck with Kirk Shelmerdine, knocking both out of the race and the 500 field. Sachs still took delivery of another 2 cars from Evernham Motorsports, and with them attempted another 6 races that season. This time he managed to qualify for both Pocono races, but once again pulled behind the wall early, leaving him in last place both times. These were the 262nd and 263rd Cup Series starts of the now 52-year-old driver's career. Daytona Speed Incorporated made its final attempt at Atlanta in March of 2006, where Sachs failed to qualify with Who's Your Daddy energy drink as his sponsor on a Ford. Sachs attempted another 2 races that year with Front Row Motorsports, but didn't qualify for either of them. And in 2008, his latest attempt to qualify for the ARCA 200 at Daytona with Bobby Jones ended with a DNQ. But this too wasn't quite the end. At the turn of the decade, Sachs and his family founded Grand Touring Vodka, and at first looked to promote the brand with their race team. When that fell through, Sachs reached out to JR Motorsports and worked out a deal to sponsor the team in a few races. In exchange, Sachs would get one more shot at competing in NASCAR. On July 2nd, 2010, Greg Sachs, now 57, qualified 7th on the grid for the Subway Jalapeno 250 at Daytona for the NASCAR Nationwide Series.
Just ahead of them, that 88 car out of the Junior Motorsports stables, Greg Sachs, 25 years after his win in the Firecracker 400 here at Daytona. Back again, one race shot for Sachs. That company that sponsors that car, he owns. He's one of the principal investors in, and they are going to sponsor the 88 car with Ron Fellows at Watkins Glen and Elliott Sadler for a number of races. And Sachs right now running in 18th position. Again, 25 years after his great upset win here at Daytona. 57 years old.
Yeah, for not being in a race car, he's doing a nice job.
25 years after his only Winston Cup win on the same weekend and at the same track, Sachs finished the race on the lead lap in 21st. Having taken this journey, what's the proper way to describe Greg Sachs and his career? While unquestionably a talent in NASCAR's modified ranks, his statistics in the Cup Series are less than flattering. In 263 career Cup Series starts, he failed to finish 123, or 47% of those races. That meant every time he fired his engine, you could practically flip a coin to predict whether he'd make it to the checkered flag. He finished last 11 times, which currently ties him with active drivers Joey Gase and Corey LaJoie. He scored 10 or more DNFs in 5 seasons, including his only full-time year in 1994. This is why his best points finish didn't come in 94. Instead, it was in 1984 when he finished 19th in points despite not running the spring race in Bristol. And that's where things get interesting. In the Cup Series, Sachs drove for 24 different team owners, including himself. Many of these teams replaced Sachs with drivers who did not perform any better. Other times, the team shut down completely. In either case, the issue wasn't the driver. Still, even while driving for such a variety of teams during his entire Cup career, Sachs only failed to qualify 35 times. He never had more than 3 DNQs in any one season until 1995. Given all the challenges of jumping from one team to the next, from big teams to small teams, year after year, Sachs remained an incredible qualifier. Every car he climbed into seemed to get just that much faster. sometimes too fast. This talent must have kept him in demand, making him perhaps the most prolific journeyman driver the Cup Series has ever seen. Then, of course, there's his win. In his 222 Cup Series starts after that 4th of July in 1985, Sachs scored just 2 more top 5 finishes, both for the Newman-Hendrick deal in 1990, and just 16 more top 10s. But the win still vaults him ahead of countless other drivers who never had that moment, never mind at Daytona. Combined with his confident smile as he embraced the image of a race car driver as a celebrity, this certainly played a hand in his popularity and his longevity. It's been a long and winding journey for Greg Sachs, as it has for Rise of the Field Fillers. With this episode, I have now covered all the field fillers of the 2004 NASCAR Nextel Cup season, at least all of them that qualified for a race. But we still need to cover the ones that didn't qualify, and those that never quite made it to the track. That's coming up next time in Rise of the Field Fillers.
In America, there exists a sport that is driven by the fans. They are why everyone works so hard, on the teams and at the tracks, in front of the grandstands and behind the scenes, to give the fans the greatest race possible. NASCAR fans deserve the best, starting from the high banks of Daytona, all the way to the shores of California, and at every race in between. NASCAR fans, you're the reason for our success. Thanks.